All right, here we have a sprint takeover with The Children of the Sky by Twinkle Toes the Berserker. So let's get into that. It is prose. Anything you'd like to do? Okay, I would like to zoom in. I love that font. All right, let's get the. Okay, here's my critique pen. All right, the elders always told me that catching a falling star would burn me, but I tried it all the same. She fell into my hand, so small and beautiful and bright, still shining, small enough to fit in my pocket almost, small enough that she needed to be cradled and cuddled. She was crying. She was only a baby. I would probably so small, comma, so beautiful, comma, and so bright, period, and then put um, still shining somewhere else. So you have she fell into my hands, an almost period, and have that be, it wouldn't be a grammatically correct sentence, but it would just really push that it was so small, so beautiful, so bright. And uh, and you may not need still shining because you're saying bright right there already. So, okay. She was only a baby. I wrapped her up in my cloak and took her home. What else could I do with her? Leave her out for the void beasts to find her? Oh, cool. We have void beasts? That's good to know. Never. And she hadn't burned me after all. I gave her some goat's milk and she drank it, chortling happily at me when she was done. I sat with her in my little house, just looking at her, and tried to decide what to do. I suppose I should name you, I told her as she tried to chew on her foot. I reached out and touched one of her sheer white curls. How about Astara? She giggled and smiled toothlessly up at me. I took this as a good sign. Astara, then. She grew rapidly in the way that babies do. I swear I blinked and she was walking. But months had gone by without me noticing. One day follows another so quickly once you have a child to raise. She was a sweet, happy baby. I wanted to hide her, but I knew it was impossible. After she had started to walk, I took her to the elders. Miga, the eldest, watched my adopted daughter wobble around. What is this? He asked me. My daughter, Astra, I answered evenly. You have no lover, no wife, Elise the matron observed. No, but I have a daughter. Astra toddled over to Miga and grinned up at him, drooling. Miga sighed. She is a fallen star. Anyone can see that. He looked down at Astra's shining face and his stern demeanor cracked. He smiled back at her. But anyone can see you are unharmed, and she is a sweet child. I vote she may stay. For now. For now, agreed Elise, and so I went around the room. My daughter could stay, if only temporary. When Estara was 3 and fast asleep in her bed, I again went walking at night in the deep forest meadow not far from my home. I saw a piece of sky fall, and I caught it in my hands. This time it was a baby boy, dark as Estara was light. I wrapped him in my cloak and took him home. I gave him goat's milk, named him Kleck. I don't know that. Estara was thrilled to meet her new baby brother. Kleck was fascinated by her. He crawled after her as soon as he was able. He loved looking up at his fair sister with his wide eyes, dark like the night sky. I took him to the elders sooner than I had with us Estara. He was only a few days old. They looked troubled, but agreed that Kleck would stay as well. My third child, holy cow, this guy. Clake? Oh, okay, Clake. Like cake. Okay, Clake. Thank you. Oh, Oh, X Zefiev. Um, my third child, Zefiev, fell from the sky in a gust of wind. The winds blew wild around the village, and the elders issued an ultimatum. The children would have to go. I had an ultimatum of my own. I would go with them. The elders agreed. They gave us some food and supplies. Off we went into the blasted lands where the void beasts roam. It will be all right, children, I told the 6-year-old Astara and the 3-year-old Clake, and little Ziefiev sleeping soundly on my back. We will find our own place, and all will be well. Yes, father, Astara agreed brightly. All be well, Clake said with a grin. The wind tousled my hair as I walked through the blasted lands. That night I built a fire on the barren land. I first fed the goat and the mule I had been allowed to bring with me, and then the children. I found I was not hungry, only exhausted and heartsick. Father, eat. Astra pushed some of her food at me. Eat. Clake agreed. Perhaps in the morning, I told them. Shortly after, we all laid down to sleep. I woke in the middle of the night to the soft voices of the children. We were surrounded by void beasts, and I knew we were doomed. The void beasts would destroy us as they destroyed all things. I grabbed Zefiev and Astra and pulled them under me, hoping to protect them. Clake had already wandered toward the void beast out of my reach. Clake, come here, I wailed. He ignored me and went closer to the void beast. The one nearest him let out a shrieking hiss. Its voice was like knives in my ears, and I heard Astra and Zefiev cry under me. I'm going to pronounce it different every single time. Just watch. Clake, seemingly unafraid, seemingly, I don't know. It's an ad. You gotta add. I don't know if you need that. He, because, well, the father, from the point of view, is seeing it, and he appears to be unafraid. But it's a thing about getting rid of adjectives or adverbs because you're modifying unafraid. If you, some people believe that if it is an and you need to have an adverb, that your primary verb isn't strong enough. So, Clake, seemingly unafraid, waved a hand in front of his face. Stinky, he complained. Then he screamed back at the wild beast. And he did with a voice like thunder that growled up from the depths of the earth, all the way to the sky. The void beast fled into the night. I climbed off Astara and Zefiev, cradling them both until they stopped crying. Clake walked back over. All be well, he told me with a smile. I nodded and pulled him into a hug with Astara and Zefiev. We moved on. Eventually, we came to a forest, past the blasted lands, and there we made our new home. Zefiev grew up to be trouble, full of mischief. He delighted in teasing Astara and Clake. He would listen to me, but when it suited, he would listen to me when it suited him to do so. I was never sure what to do or what to tell him to make him behave. That seems kind of awkward. So I never sure what to do or what to tell him to make him to. Uh, Usually, I would, I don't know, I'd actually get rid of these commas there because you're putting a parenthetical in the middle that is still vital information. I don't know. Not sure what to do about that. Surely a day would come that his mischief would cause him trouble. More children fell from the sky to land in my arms. Diamachus, Achelin, Sutar, and Bobris, to name a few. Some fell at night, some fell during the day. I came to expect it almost any given year, when the oldest were enough to help me care for the youngest. I did not age. This troubled me, but as years went on and the children grew, I noticed most of them did not age past 20 or so. I thought perhaps it was the place we had found, something in the forest, in the earth and air. All of the children developed little quirks. Astara seemed still glittered and shone just like the star she had been. Clake was dark, and few times we were threatened by void beasts. The few times we were threatened by void beasts, he chased them away with ease. Zekfiev controlled the wind when he was older. The children, most of them, wandered off into the world as they grew, as children do, but always they would wander back, except for Diamachus, who stayed with me in the house I had built for the children. I do not wish to leave the forest, he told me when I asked. The forest is my home, but you, father, should go and see the world. Aren't you curious? I am content to raise my children, I said with a smile. None of us had have fallen from the sky for 100 years, Diamachus pointed out. I think the sky has given up all her children for you to raise. He was not wrong. This had weighed on me and depressed me for many years. At the same time, in many ways, it was a relief. After the years of chaos raising my adopted brood, good choice of word, brood, adopted brood, there was peace in the silence. But it was a lonely peace. Diamachus was right. I missed my children. And so back into the wild world I went. When I left the forest, I found a vast plain where once there had been only the blasted lands. Rolling waves of golden grass rippled in a gentle breeze. I stared at it for a long time, remembering the days when only void beasts had roamed those lands. I'd probably say these lands because he's in the land that he's describing. Those would be somewhere where you're not. 3D. Ooh, 3D. But these lands is where he's located. So I'd probably just tweak that word. And wonder, okay, where the Voidbis had roamed these lands, and wondered what else had changed during my time in the forest. Ackland found me that evening and walked with me through the plains for several days after. We talked of many things. The grasses, where to find where to find water and food, how to hunt. Ackland was a great hunter and caught most of the game as we traveled. At length, an encampment of tents appeared on the horizon. There are my people, the Kylan, Ekelin told me with a proud smile. They have adopted me as a god. I do what I can to protect and guide them. A god? I asked, frowning, but he did not answer. We went to the encampment together. The Kylan were happy to see Ekelin. I could see they were curious about me as well, although they were too polite to ask what they wanted to know, all but one, a small child, perhaps 4 or 5. The child clutched at my leg, grinning. What are you the god of? They asked, with cheerful, guileless grin. A woman, the child's mother, pulled them away a moment later, but the question remained with me. Okay, you don't need to. I think you're doubling here. You have a woman and the child's mother. You probably don't need both. I'd get rid of the woman as it's less descriptive, but just ti- saying you don't need to say the same thing twice unless you really want to bring emphasis to it. but I would probably just say the child's mother pulled them away. Them? Oh, you're using the singular they. Okay. I left the Kylan, and Ekelin told me to head south for the coast. I met my son, Sutar, there. He took me in a boat across the sea. He taught me to sail, and I asked him if he also had people who called him a god, as with his brother Ekelin. He nodded. All sailors hail me as their god, and I favor them with good wind and fair weather when I can. But you are not a god, I tried to object. My children gods? He only laughed, a hearty chuckle. Father, you caught us out of the sky. What did you think we were? For this I had no answer. Sutar took me to the great trade city of June, where they grew and sold a great many spices. Here I found my daughter Astara sitting in a temple with no roof, so that there was an open view of the sky, the sun, and stars. She embraced me and called me father, and the people gathered nearby began to whisper. And so I went from city to town to clan, visiting my children who called me father. Often I was accompanied by Sutar while I was at sea. Bobris came with me while I was on foot, following the road. My children's people called me Father of the Gods and asked my name. I realized I no longer remembered it. I had only been father to my children for many hundreds of years. Eventually, I stopped seeking my children and went high into the mountains to think. Here, there was snow and thick, dense trees, and no one called me father. I wanted to think, to understand, how had this happened? I climbed higher, past the trees and snow, and although I could feel the cold, I did not mind it. The snow never bothered me anyway. No, sorry. Uh, I still had not aged, and this troubled me. What had I become? I had been born of a mortal man. What was I now? Who was I now? The father of the gods? Why me? I asked the clear blue sky when I reached the top of the mountain. Why did you give me Astra and Clake and Zifiev and the others to me? I was just a man. There was no answer from the sky. There had never been any answers from the sky, only children for me to love and raise. I waited there for a very long time. I watched the stars come out and asked again. I asked again at dawn and once more at sunset. The next day I asked over and over again, the whole day long. How many times I asked? How many days went by? I do not know. I cannot say. There was never any answer from the sky. At last I walked down the mountain into the snow. A few flakes drifted gently around me, and I reached out my hand and caught one. In my hands I held a tiny baby, with white hair and piercing blue eyes. I wrapped him carefully in my cloak as he began to fuss and decided this was my answer. Maybe I was just a man, just a father. Maybe the sky would give me no answer in words, but she would give me children to love. I was the man who caught a falling star, and a piece of sky, and a breath of wind, and so many others. Perhaps I was more than a normal man after all. I was the father of the gods of Baal. I climbed down the mountain and brought my new son home. Wow! Wow. That was awesome. Okay, everyone, go find that link, like this. This was amazing. The Children of the Sky. Yeah. What can I say about this? Very well written. I love the narrative of it. The story. I don't think never had we never knew the man's name. Yeah, I mean it's a beautiful story. Um, I guess I was nitpicking a little bit on the grammar in some of the places. Yeah, it is very sweet. I like it. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to say. I I wish I knew a little bit more about Zifiev because we saw Astra, we saw some of the other sons and daughters. Yeah, yeah, we saw Eklund, but we never did really visit Zefiev. But you know, he had so many. It appeared he had so many children that he didn't need to visit them all. Wow. I actually like the ending. He was okay with just being a man. The anthology, which is sadly no longer available, was a wonderful piece of fiction. Yeah, this is just a man that lived for centuries. Well, yeah, but aside from his immortality that was granted to him to raise the children who became gods, he had no special talent, unless you would say that his talent was to love. His talent was to raise, gods. You know, Zifiev is getting his own longer story. Oh, okay. Shaping the stars into gods. Yeah. And I'm thinking, Joseph of the New Testament was not the Christ's father, but he raised a god. Okay. And similar to this, I believe that the New Testament is true and factual. Other people may believe it's more fairy and fiction, but this man reminds me of Joseph, a humble man who has humble beginnings, but takes it upon himself to. Yes, you do not need to be connected by blood to be a father to someone. And I love from Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2, Hansa, the person who raised Star Lord or Peter Quill, he says, this guy may be your father, but he was never your daddy. And that's the difference between being a father and being a dad. And I think it's being having both of those titles is an honor for me as well. Yes, a beautiful story. Thank you so much. Um, thank you so much for sharing it with us. This I thought I was going to be able to provide some critique. As the oldest of now six children, you understand. And thank you, James. That's very kind of you. Um, and I personally could relate, with this and some of the stuff in here, as a father of five children. Um, yeah, this beautiful, simply beautiful. Please, anyone who sees this, please go read it and support and like the article.